Right, back again, carry on. Now, I don't know if that last section completed, because when I went to pause the camera, it had come up with a low battery warning and there was no video monitoring. I think the time was still counting, but I don't know. So, if there's a chunk missing, apologies. The camera's now plugged into a monster power bank, which should keep it going for a long time. Anyway, the carriage assembly next. Start. Oh my gosh. It's really fresh and burr. Generally, all the threads, all the fittings on this are very good. Reasonably impressed so far. The instructions could possibly be a bit clearer. I've not seen any mention, or not noticed any mention, of actually checking squareness other than setting the rails parallel to the back, or setting the carriage parallel to the back rather. Which could be why there's some comments about alignment and accuracy. People don't realise it needs doing as the machine is built. Again, there could be something later in the book saying to cross-check everything. Also being paid. Both guards and the screw nuts. Two guards, so not lock solid. So, the motor base to the lead screw. It also acts as a locator on the side, or locates on, possibly. The slide rods. I think there are screws through as well. So it clamps down and it just centres on the rods that are fixed through alternate screws. Well, this lead screws would be multi-start. Twin or triple start. Interesting. Yeah, triple start with those screws. So the movement is 3 apparent thread pitches for each rotation of the screw. Because there's 3 interleaved threads. You can see it. 1 start there, 4 start, 3. 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and that's 1 full turn back to the next one. It's probably easier to show than describe. So 1 turn of the screw. And I'll set that so it's just about flush with the fixing screw heads. 1 full turn takes it down a long way. It's not timed up yet. It's about 10mm pitch in effect. No machined ends. The motor just clamps straight onto the thread. Put each carriage on a screw on its guides. And that whole assembly should for easy to hold. Slotted there as well. I thought that should slot through. It doesn't appear to. If it does, it's very, very tight. It's just paint. Not sure if that's supposed to go through or not. There's a little bit of play. I think that's just sit on that. So they act as spacers and locators. Maybe not, no, it's too tall. No. They've got to fit in. Okay, the hole's going to need cleaning out a bit, I think. And the motor mounts. I think it should be a bit of paint, a bit of a burr. But they need to locate in a little bit, I think. And just a fraction off going in. Just a couple dropped off. Only a fraction. It's it is. Just stop and going. Okay, it's into the. It's strange now. The top of that is flat. The bottom of the top extrusion is flat. That's the linear guide. It's just cheating. Take the whole thing off centre. You can't because it's. Might do a bit. Oh yes. Just let the whole thing tilt slightly. And as I bring it back up, it grabs. Yeah, well, that works. Yeah, just put it all into a slight lean, and then as it comes square, it'll fit into place. You know, it's snug, but it's not ludicrously tight. Yeah. It's okay. I've got to tighten in from the bottom. So they use 4x20s. Oh, need the top bearing on there as well. Which I missed. Give me that screw it in yet. Goes back to the R5s, 4x20s. Just find the hole centre first. To make it easy to fit that in. It's 4x8. It's a short one originally. Oh, that's there, 8 I believe. So made 4x6 and 4x8. They hold the centre bearing position. And get them in underneath. So that's one. So again, not tightening anything yet because the bottom is not in alignment. And do the same to the other side. There. This one there. Oh, now, which way do the cables? So I didn't check. The cables go to the front or the back. It's not obvious at that point. should be the other way around. Control boxes at the back. But actually on the picture, it looks like the connectors are on the front of the motors. Okay, I'll leave it to assist. That's how they've got it. It's not very clear, but you can just see a little connector offsetting the base of each motor. That picture. So it's good for them, it's good for me. Another bearing this time. That was a bit snug fit. Go on. No. That was not going to go on. Strange. That side was an easier fit. This one's not one to go at all. It's a bit. Oh, there's a grub screw there. Yeah, that's why. There's a little grub screw inside the bearing. Or two, in fact, 45 degrees on the side. And that's why it got gone. Needs those loosely. That's the other side. One of them was just a little bit tight. The other one goes in quite easily. I'll try to turn the whole assembly round. Something different. Oh, that fits better, yes. I think it's just the pressing in the plate. Where the holes are in that, they have some slight tolerance that allows things to wander a bit. Put an Allen key in the thread to set the position. And 4x20 screws. Correct key. And 4x8s for bearing housing. That's all the top ones in. And the whole thing needs laying down on each side in turn, I think. So the bottom one. Anyway, now it's got the motor brackets on the back, it's probably okay to lay it down that way. I'll stop anything happening to the printhead. Bottom screws in. Yeah. Screws. Screw rails. Rails off. That's better. Hopefully already been like it is. I'm not going to tighten those much, they're just alignment really, I think. Because they don't seat through the bracket, I don't want to force them into it. And distort the frame or the rails. We tight at the top. That's the reference surface for the front to back linear rail. Just a very gentle nip on those so they don't fall out. Set it up right again. Oh, they were easily. The other side, that's pretty well. The screw's not fixed yet. It's just rattling about and things. Yeah, that's it. So now set the T-nut fixings for the motor brackets. I can't feel how those are locking. Just lift them out far enough so I can see the screw starting to push out from the nut. I know the nut will lift free into the groove and turn across it. It's properly secured. I've just noticed some offset holes in these brackets. I don't know what they're for. I didn't notice them in the drawings. There's no reference to them being for anything particular, so hopefully they're redundant because I'm not very symmetrical, they're both facing this way. Oh, now those can be tightened in to lock them and set the linear bearings positions. to work on those. Small screws. Outside. Yep. Now, at the moment, the whole thing can wobble about quite a bit. The brackets aren't square to the side. I'm just looking down on the top. A lot of slop. I think they need setting to the bed. That's what those screws are for. I should take one side out again. Swap it around. Does this fix to the inner screws or the outer screws? It fixes to some of the brackets. There's obviously more else there. Oh yeah, that's what the cross pieces are. Right, so they go on. And the bed sits on those. At some point. Okay. This control box goes on next. That's a big lump. Ah. There's a very big lump. That goes. I see. LCD just attached to a couple of cable ties on there because the cable's pre-connected. Should be using some cutters for this, but these I have to know quite nice. And cable ties. You can get the right angle on it. Yeah. Cutters are needed. Ah, no, I'm supposed to bolt on from underneath. It's in that corner, but all the fixings come through the frame. Looks like that's what the M46 screws are for, to go with the T-nuts, which they refer to as boat nuts. some already fitted and some loose. So the back of the frame are in. The side are separate because the LCD was tagged onto that bracket and the nuts would be in the way. Okay, scratch those before the room started it. So I need to tilt it this way and work on the far side. Axis down gently just in case. I'll actually move the box out of the way now. A bit left in its extruder and some cable and that's the top side. That's its position. These like that. I'm just unscrewing these a bit to excess to make sure as they tighten the nut can float in the slot and rotate to the right position. Position dead square to both the back and the side. Just got a fraction too far in. You can see one of the nuts will be cut out. That's it. Interesting to see it turn. Just at the second before it fully tightens, it suddenly pops round and in place. That was actually in. That one. And there's something off on the centre of these. These are slotted. These are straight holes, so there's no tolerance on them. So the nuts, these aren't exactly centred. Can generally not rotate when I should. That one is definitely in the right position here. Got the control box and power supply attached to the back. CD's got towards the front. See if there's any particular cable routing shown. Nope. No, just shorts is in there. Again, M6s with TLs. M3, M4x6 should I say. Gentle on those to see, I should say, just in case anything else needs changing. Right, put assembly. Okay, so lots on springs. That's what they are, the springs and handwheels are the bed support above the rails. Back a bit. Little working area. So there are the rails. We'll support it. I see, that's a separate layer. Well, at that point, the video camera ran out of memory. And the noise is better than the expletives that occurred when I discovered that later. The missing bits, luckily, aren't too much. It's the assembly of the platform springs which use countersunk screws through the platform with a spring and a couple of washers under the little handwheel nut. Those are in 6 positions, 3 either side through the bars. The screws actually have a nut directly under the platform to hold them in place and prevent them turning. And I added a shake-proof washer there when I was handling that to make sure they can't come loose easily. Then from that, after assembling bars with the springs and washers to either side, the 2 bars screw underneath the Z-axis carriers. So there's 2 screws at each end of each bar, and that pretty much completes the mechanical assembly. It then needs the wires threading in place. They are all clearly labelled, so I haven't fixed them permanently anywhere yet. They are just strung about loosely on the machine. But there's 1 to each Z motor. There's some go up the back and through. Oh, that's the other part there. From the back of the platform, there's a bracket attached on the back rail, so make sure you get the extra screw holes at the right end for that. That supports the cable chain, which loops up and attaches to the back of the frame there, and the wires come out of that and connect down to the cables from the power supply. Let's just plug in the thermocouple or PTC thermistor wire. Is a bit long, so I've just looped that up. And there's a ribbon cable already attached for the display. The display screws in place at the front. And the other motors. And there's a big ribbon at the back for the extruder, which goes up underneath the junction box. Plus, that's for the hot end rather. The extruder motor is another cable in the back here, and of course there's the X and Y motors, which each have their own cables. Then basically just plug power in. Set the Z-axis heights very carefully. There is no automatic cross compensation between the 2 Z elevation screws, so wind them at the same time by hand before applying power, and get a touch onto the head, or the nozzle rather. And this has been printing, so it's a bit messy. Get a touch with a piece of paper onto the nozzle at one side, then get the same setting at the other side, or it doesn't have to be a piece of paper, it could be something quite thick. It doesn't matter exactly what the clearance is when you set it, as long as it is as close as you can possibly get to identical at both sides. That means when it's sized to level, the error will be minimal. The other thing is to set, before that even, set the gaps between the rail and the platform to 10mm. So the springs are almost solidly compressed. And again, if you get all those consistent, that gives it a fairly good level to start with before it tries to compensate for any unevenness in the build platform. The top layer of the build platform attaches with little clips. The one supplied actually didn't fit. At maximum stretch, at least some of them simply don't open far enough. So luckily I've got quite a few spares that I use for other things. Use them for both the other printer and for soldering, for holding things occasionally, holding bits of metal together. So I use some of those, just one each side, just off centre. I think that's it for this part.